In this video, we'll try to understand what exactly is CodeFirst and how to implement the same. In the previous POCO class video, we saw that how we can take control of the entity classes. So you can go and write your classes manually, and at the same time your context class gets created by the .edmx file. So the context class is still auto-generated by Entity Framework, and the entity class is written manually with your own hands so that you can maintain your code quality. You can ensure that you don't get into those dirty attributes, those decorated classes, right? Now you want to go one step ahead. You want to also take control of the context class. So if you remember, in the POCO project, this EDMX file was still needed. Why? Because this EDMX file was responsible to generate code for your context class. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this EDMX file as well. I want to take control of the context class code also. So I want to write manually the entity classes, as well as I want to write manually my context class. And that's where exactly CodeFirst comes into picture. Now, before I get into CodeFirst coding and showing demonstrations, let me talk about three approaches we can take when we create an entity framework project. And each one of these approaches will define how much control you want on the entity code. So if you just take a simple entity framework project, in other words, no POCO, no CodeFirst, then you will need the EDMX file. The entity classes will be created automatically. The context classes will be created automatically. If you take the POCO approach, you will still need the EDMX file, but you have full control over the entity classes. So you can go and create your classes manually, and the context classes will be created automatically by using this EDMX file. And the final one is CodeFirst, which we are going to discuss in this video. So in CodeFirst, you don't need a EDMX file, and you have full control on the entity classes as well as your context classes. Now, in order to implement CodeFirst, you need to ensure that you have at least Entity Framework 4.1 or above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Nugget, and I'm going to go and reference the latest version of Entity Framework in my solution over here. So in case you're not aware of Nugget, what I'll suggest is go and please see the video what is Nugget in the .NET Fundamentals section. So in this video, I'm not going to explain what exactly is Nugget. So let me go to Nugget here, and let me go and search for entity. And I can see that the latest version is 5.0.0. So I'm going to go and click on install. I accept. Right, there it is. So, now, I can see that the latest entity framework version is now referenced in my project. So we are all set. Now the first thing is, as I've said, CodeFirst does not need a EDMX file. It's a full control on your code, right? So I'm going to go and delete this. So I'm going to go and delete this EDMX file which I have here. And now the next thing is, we need to go and create a new context class, and this context class will inherit from the DB context class. So the first thing is ensure that you have system.data.entity namespace imported into your context class. So for POCO, we need to inherit from object context, but for CodeFirst, we need to inherit from DB context. So let me go ahead and create a class over here, public class, customer context, and this will actually inherit from. Now, one class of type DB context, can expose out a lot of tables. So for example, this customer context class here, can expose out address table, it can expose out customer table, right? So in order to go and expose out a table to the middle tier, what we need to do is we need to actually go and create a collection of DB set. So you can see here I'm saying please expose out a DB set of country class. Now this country class is the same class which we have created during the POCO video. So if you remember, it's the same class. I have not changed it. So I'm saying here, please expose out a country class, a collection of country class which is of type DB set, and the property name is countries, because countries will represent a plural kind of data. let me also go and tidy this code here, because currently my country class is lying in the my first entity namespace, and my customer context class is also in the same namespace. So I can just go and remove this namespace qualifier here. Now, when I started this whole video series, I said that entity framework is all about mapping two worlds. It's a OR mapper, right? So if you see the initial first two videos, I said that entity framework is a OR mapper and it maps two worlds. So basically you have one world, which is your middle tier, your objects, your object oriented world, I'll say, which has customer objects, supplier objects, and it has the relationships defined in terms of aggregation and composition. And then you have your database world, which is more of a technology world, technical world, where you have primary keys, relationships are defined in terms of foreign keys, etc. And this entity framework, this OR mapper sits in between and maps these two worlds. And that mapping was done by the EDMX file. And there can always be mismatches between these two worlds. For example, in our case currently, you can see that my class name is country, right? But my table name is TBL country. So there should be some way, we should be able to do mapping in CodeFirst as well. And now, because we have deleted the EDMX file, currently we do not have any other way of telling the entity framework what to do, right? So somewhere we need to go and define the mapping in CodeFirst. And because there is no EDMX file currently, so where do we do it? Now, this mapping between these two worlds in CodeFirst is done by a Fluent interface called as Model Builder. Now, what exactly are Fluent interfaces? So, Fluent interfaces, makes your code more readable. It makes your code more nice. Now, I won't be discussing Fluent interfaces in this video. We have a very separate, nice video, which is on Fluent interfaces, where I've explained what exactly is Fluent interface, how to create a Fluent interface in .NET, and what exactly is method chaining. So currently, in this video, I'm not going to discuss on Fluent interfaces. In case you are interested or you do not know about it, please do go and refer the design pattern section, where I've discussed about Fluent interface and method chaining. Now, this mapping code of Fluent interfaces, should get executed, before the DB context object is created. In other words, or before the customer context object is created, right? So we have a very nice event here called as the on model creating event. So when the model gets created, right, this is the place, where probably we would like to go and write our mapping code. Now, in this event, you can see that I have access to this model builder object over here, right? So now, in order to go and define the mapping between the country class and the TBL country table, we need to write model builder dot use this entity structure, that is country dot map it to table TBL. So currently our table name is TBL country. Now all OR mappers, it's either entity framework or Hibernate, they need a key. If you do not provide a key, it actually throws up an error. So if you remember, right, in the second or the third video in the entity framework series, you would have noticed that in one of the videos, where I did not define the primary key in the EDMX file, it actually threw up a compilation error. So here also, by using this model builder interface, we need to go and define the key for our country entity. Now, to define a key, we have a very nice method in this model builder class here called as has key. So you can see that, I have again used model builder dot entity. I provided my entity name. I have said has key, and then I'm said that please go and make my country name as my key. And also do go and insert this line of code here, database dot set initializer, and set this initializer of this customer context to null. Now what this does is it actually disables, metadata check. Okay. I'll explain this code later on, but for now, because this is a preliminary class of CodeFirst, so just go and put this line of code here, and we'll talk about this line of code if wanted in the coming videos more. Okay. So now we are done with the customer context class here, but this customer context class, needs to also locate, where your database is and where your server is, etc. Right? So we need to definitely go and define a connection string for this customer context class. So in the app config file, or must be the web config file, depending on what kind of project you are working on, go and make an entry with the same context class name. For example, our current context class name is what? Customer context. So take the same name and make an entry into your app config file and give and provide the connection string over here. So you can see here in this app.config file, I have created a connection string key called as customer context, and I have provided the connection string over here. Okay. And so that's it. So we are done. So we have actually created the customer context class. We have set all our mapping by using this Fluent interface called as model builder. We have also exposed out the table data by using this db set. We have also made an entry into the app config file. Now the final thing is we need to go and consume this customer context class inside our console application or inside our UI. So the client code is almost same here. So what we have to do is we have to say customer context is equal to new customer context, and please go and fill my country collection. So countries is equal to data access layer dot. If you remember this countries here, which was exposed as a db set collection, so we're going to use that countries dot to list and typecast it to country, and that's it. So the client code is almost same, as we were doing previously. So let me put a debug point here and let's go and run this project here. And if you now see, the countries collection has been filled with data. So we have 3 records here, and all these 3 records have been loaded inside this countries collection here by using the CodeFirst methodology. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. In this video, we were trying to understand what exactly is CodeFirst and how to use it. Thank you so much.